Alright, so I just want to talk about this third case of Ebola because I've come to two thoughts here. I've had two epiphanies or whatever the fuck you want to call them. So I just wanted, it's not so much about the third case of Ebola more than like I've just got these two thoughts in my mind about these things. So they've been bringing in, a bunch of people to treat them with Ebola that got it in Africa, and they've been bringing them into this country. But it just so happens the two nurses that contract Ebola from treating a patient here in America, those two nurses happen to be treating the Thomas Duncan guy, not the other numerous amount of people they've brought in. So it's like kind of a coincidence there. Like maybe they're lying about it because it's very convenient to say, oh, these two nurses caught it from Thomas Duncan, who's like the most famous guy who has Ebola, because he they discovered he had Ebola here, and he was the highlight. He was the top guy, the main guy. So that just bringing that up, it's just a coincidence that the two people that caught Ebola here from other people were caught it from Thomas Duncan and not some random guy they brought in here who wasn't really on the news that much. They brought in a lot of people, I believe, into America to treat him for Ebola, but none of those people got sick. It just so happens that the people treating Thomas Duncan got sick. And then the second thing that I thought of is you always hear like, oh, Obama might run for a third term. I'm like, no, it's not gonna happen, people. He's not gonna run for a third term. But I thought of something, and I'm not saying this is gonna happen. I'm just bringing it up. What if it comes 2016 and Ebola is widespread? It's a big thing. Thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people have got it, and they go, oh, you cannot come outside because it could spread Ebola. So we're just gonna cancel the 2016 elections, and Obama's gonna do it. Keep running, keep being our president. What if that happens? you know. So just bringing that up. Not saying it's gonna happen. Just bringing up the fact that that could happen. Again, not saying it's gonna happen, but again, I just had two thoughts there I've thought of, and if you think of anything, always comment below because I'm always willing to learn more information on this Ebola thing. I'm not an expert on it, but I'm just a logical person, just looking at the news from a logical standpoint. They're clearly letting it in. They're clearly not doing anything about it. The CDC is clearly corrupt and not doing anything to save us. They're supposed to be there to protect us, but it's just the opposite. They're there to let it in and have it spread. And yeah, I mean, again, I said this before. If they would not have let in the guy from Liberia come in, if they would have stopped the flights or at least checked them or quarantined them before they came to this country and made sure they don't have Ebola, then this would never have happened to begin with. This Ebola thing would never have happened, and there's probably more people with Ebola that we don't even know about. They probably are. They might be covering it up. Who knows? Again, it's like a coincidence that just these two people from this one guy got it. Chances are more. Again, it could just be a coincidence, but there's got to be more people with it. I mean, the Thomas Duncan guy was out and about. Is it airborne? It could be airborne. I mean, that's the thing. And people are like, oh no, it's not airborne. Well, this is the biggest Ebola outbreak in history, according to the CDC. And past Ebola outbreaks have only, not even close to 4,000 people have died. So this virus is obviously more deadly than the previous. It's obviously mutated or gotten some, it's obviously more advanced than other ones. And so it very well could be airborne. And it could become airborne in the future, since it's obviously way more deadly than the other Ebola viruses. It's obviously mutated. I heard the CDC or some, I believe it was the CDC, said it's mutated like 300 times. I don't know if that's true, but I heard that. So I mean, but it's obviously different than past viruses, and it could be airborne. People are like, oh, it's not airborne. Why? Why? Oh, the CDC says so. Yeah, because it covered the same CDC that and the CDC also let that third, I think it was the third one, it was either the second or third, I'm 99% sure it was the third Ebola patient fly. She called the CDC before she flew in the plane with Ebola. So she flew in the plane with Ebola, I heard she contacted the CDC before she flew. And you think that, oh, it was just a friendly conversation. They were probably talking about that. But no, and she flew. when she contacted the CDC before. So the CDC, the same CDC that cleans the sidewalk with that Ebola patient, Thomas Duncan. Is that his name? Thomas Duncan, I believe it's his name. Um, I don't fuck. The first Ebola patient, he bombed it on the sidewalk, and they just power washed it with no equipment on, no hazmat suits on whatsoever. The CDC, the same CDC that doesn't quarantine people, the same CDC that is just not doing anything at all. It's ridiculous. They're not doing anything at all. People have to realize this is a serious issue, especially with our incompetent government that wants it to spread to further their political agendas. Declare martial law. Just take more of our freedoms. So there you go, people. And it could spread, and they're like, oh, now you can't come outside your house. You got to get the vaccine. It's just gonna, it's gonna, if this gets big, it's gonna turn into a collapse of the economy because people aren't gonna go outside. There's gonna be a lot of fear because the symptoms are just a common cold, pretty much. The symptoms are pretty much a cold. So people who get colds, you're gonna be like, oh, I have Ebola. A lot of fear going around. And if it gets to hundreds of thousands of people, I mean, I would be scared, of having it. But just because you get a cold, don't panic, because almost everybody during the winter gets sick. So that's 318 million people getting sick versus 300,000, let's say, getting Ebola. If it gets really bad. So chances are you're not gonna get it. It's very low chance you'll get it. So there's not. The worst thing that's going to come out of it, I think, is a fear and possibly a collapse of the economy, and possibly, people's reactions to the fear of it. Not so much getting the Ebola itself. I'm not really worried about getting the Ebola. I'm worried about people panicking, the economy collapsing, the government using martial law and taking our liberties. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about getting Ebola. Like, what if nobody goes outside their house? The economy will collapse totally, and this could really fuck shit up in the world. It already has in Africa, but it could here. And us leaving our borders open is just taking Africa and pretty much moving it over here. That's what's gonna happen if we keep leaving our borders open for people with Ebola to come in. It's obviously gonna spread. It's gonna get more deadly. But our government keeps saying, let's leave the borders open, let's let people with Ebola come here. Pretty much, anybody with Ebola is going to come here if they can to get treatment because they want to live. You don't blame them, but lock down the borders. Let's just keep this in Africa, keep this problem in a small place. If it gets big, then you cannot contain it. Keep it in a small place, contain it, and I don't want it so it doesn't come here. The answer is not to move people with Ebola in here. The answer is to keep it in Africa. Keep it as isolated as possible, and do not let people come here. Put the military on the border. Make sure nobody gets in here illegally, because we got to take every precaution necessary, or that we can, to prevent this from, to prevent a spread, and we're clearly not doing that. So there you go, people. Third person with Ebola. It's spreading. It's probably going to get a lot bigger, because of the incompetence of our government and just them not doing jack shit. They're actually doing the opposite of, protecting us. They're letting it spread. So, I mean, it's just complete bullshit what the government's doing. They're not going to save you. They're there to further their political agendas, not to protect you. So, third person infected with Ebola probably will be more. And, yeah. So, I mean, I know I'm making a ton of videos about Ebola, but it's such a huge deal. And I just feel the need to make videos about it because, again, it's just a big deal. It could lead to the collapse of the economy. It could lead to martial law. It could lead to a lot of things. So there you go, people. There's my little video, third person with Ebola. Probably more videos to come on this issue. So there you go, people.